Hey everybody, welcome back to my Star Wars show, and happy May the 4th. We are here to talk about Return of the Jedi, but as you can tell, this is kind of a weird intro, unfortunately, of me and Andrew's feature-length conversation. About the first 10 minutes got lost, which is kind of tough because that's the intro, that was opening statements, that was sort of the setup for the conversation, but we don't have that anymore. I don't know where it went. Squadcast fucked us. It happens sometimes, which is a little bit of a bummer. But the rest of the conversation is so good. I didn't want to lose the episode. I didn't want to have nothing up for May the 4th. So, sorry, I guess. Really what you should do is you should write an angry letter to your congressman and to whoever owns Squadcast. I think it's now Riverside. So, you take that up with them and then enjoy the rest of the discussion. It's very, very good. Yeah, sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, we're back. I don't know what happened. Something always happens whenever we try to record. There's always some kind of technical issue, but I think we're good now. And I really like what you were setting up for us there, Andrew, in thinking about the both the variety that this film provides, but also the familiarity that is also intrinsic to it, and spending so much time on Tatooine. And one thing I always reflect on when I'm rewatching this movie is kind of the balance of time, in that we're on Tatooine for 40 minutes of the film, probably maybe a bit less than that, and then the entire rest of the time we are on Endor. We're very briefly in the control room as we're planning, and we learn what information the Bothans died to bring us. But we very quickly make our way to Endor, and then if we're not on Endor, we're in the skies above. So it's not as varied as a film like Empire, for instance. We do go back to Dagobah, but we're on Dagobah very briefly, just long enough for Yoda to die. And we'll talk about that scene. But it is interesting how...
And for Luke to...
Yeah.
I was going to say for Luke to confront Obi-Wan.
Yeah, it's good material, but it ends up kind of getting pushed to the periphery of my memory, I feel, because I really see this movie as the sail barge heist and then the Battle of Endor, which I think is both to its benefit and also kind of to its detriment if we think about Empire as really having a very clear phase on Hoth and then a very clear phase on Dagobah, and then obviously the final portion on Cloud City. It's not quite that, I don't feel, but I don't really mind. And let's just dive into the Tatooine part. I think that there is so much packed into Jabba's palace that exemplifies why I love the Star Wars series. There is so much weirdness here. It starts off very weird. We start off in a very disorienting way here in the palace. Our main character is nowhere to be seen, kind of building this anticipation in the audience. When we're going to see Luke, when we're going to see Leia, we're going to get Han back, as C-3PO and R2 enter Jabba's palace, where they first talk to the eyeball sticking out of the door. And then yeah, and then there's the spider creature right behind C-3PO, and we bump into a Gamorrean very quickly. I'm really captivated by this part of the film. I think that Jabba's palace is full of so many bizarre, interesting, badass, funny aliens that in some ways, for me, even better than the Mos Eisley Cantina, like, exemplifies the notion of scum and villainy. And obviously that makes sense because it's underbelly. We are in Jabba's palace, but I don't see it like as derivative of that scene. I see it as like bigger and better than, for all of the unrestrained weirdness of the special editions. Also, I really like the musical number. I think that one of the things I've come to really appreciate about the prequels, but also about these special editions, in a world where we have the sequels and we have all the Disney era stuff, which, as people who watch the show know, I really like almost all of it. But there's a different feeling between like the design by committee that sort of informs all the decisions made in the Disney era, and the unrestrained wackiness of George Lucas's mind, where he's like, I just want a big funny, like thin snouted creature to dance around and sing a song. So he does it. I love the vibe. What do you make of Jabba's palace?
I love how I think later on there's like an evening scene where it focuses on the outside of the palace, and there's like this like little stout frog creature just sitting there, and then you see like a little rat or something running around, and he just like with the tongue just nabs it, and it's like why is that frog creature, like I don't know, it just kind of makes you think like, oh, is that Jabba's, like, is that his pet, is that like local wildlife, like just like you said, like there's just all these things, all these elements are included, they're just introduced, and like your mind kind of just like goes wild trying to make sense of like why is like you start doing the kind of like the playing with Legos kind of thing where like, oh, like this character has like probably has some kind of backstory or something where they're there for a reason. I mean, there's literally a book called Tales from Jabba's Palace, which I have somewhere. I don't know where it is right now, but like almost every person from like the Rancor handler, the very large, robust guy, to even just Max Rebo, like they all have like little snippets and stories, and like I mean it's not part of the movie, but like if you're someone who loves like Star Wars lore or just Star Wars like the exploration, like you read that and you go back watching all of the first half of the film, and you're like, oh, like there's those creatures, like there's the connections there and stuff. And I mean I like you said, like the little eyeball thing, I love that very weird kind of the voice that like that the sounds it makes. It reminds me of like that Techno Union guy from Attack of the Clones that just is like little like that weird like vibrating warbling sound. Like I love how they have these different sounds. We see Ula, right? We see like the dancing Twi'lek, and it's like, oh, like like she's like a slave, she's like a dancer, and it's like, oh, how did she get into this situation, right? And then of course we see Boba. I like how he does like the little thing where he like kind of just like he's like flirting with the girls and kind of just like he's just being a smooth bounty hunter. I love even the nod of approval that he gives with the thermal detonator, like just that gesture is like, okay, like we like that gives us more insight into like he respects that move, right? It's dangerous. He was ready to kill Leia, but like not bad. Like that was good negotiating. Like I love all these little interactions, and they kind of just like they're very just small things, but they all kind of like do that thing we talk about where like the stuff about Star Wars we love is the fleshing out, the kind of like playground sandbox building you kind of do in your head with all these different characters, and like Max Rebo being like has like this circular xylophone piano thing, and it's just like mashing keys, but like it's making music. The whole Sly Noodles, I can't do the bajibo, like all the little like the musical number, which I remember when that wasn't in there when I was a kid, when I watching the VHS tapes, that wasn't in there. And but like like all these different characters, all these different the Gamorrean guards, when I was a kid, Bib Fortuna terrified me. I thought he was the creepiest looking dude, like just like pale, like albino looking in his eyes. He has kind of like the Sith eyes before Sith eyes were even a thing, and then the gloved fingerless hand, like I don't know,
long
just
nails,
the way he talked. Yeah, he was just creepy, and the way he talked too, like Jabba no ba, like, and then like, oh, like he used to creep me out. Like I didn't even know he was like a Twi'lek till like way later on. I didn't know that's what the male ones looked like, but like I just remember he creeped me out more than like Jabba did. He just looked very like, I don't know, there's something just, like when you look at a clown and like it's humanoid, but there's the features that kind of are just uncanny. They kind of just make you feel unease. That's how Bib Fortuna was when I was like, oh, like whenever as a kid, whenever he would show up, like I would tense up. I did not like his design, even less so in Book of Boba Fett. But anyways, or was it the end of Mando season 2? Whichever it was, when he shows up when he's all chunky when he's all chunky, but like just the different alien species, a different variety. Freaking what's his name? Salacious Crumb.
I love him.
It looks like he's like on a pillow. Like I don't know if he's on a pillow or on Jabba's like little paunch or something, but just like, and then he gets zapped and he just like flies straight up in the air with R2. I love that. So all the interactions, the music. Is this the part where is it on the sail barge or in his palace where they play that one tune that I recognize from Battlefront 2? The dun, 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 dun.
I think it's on the.
It's like a specific.
I think it's the sail barge. If we're thinking the same thing, yeah.
Okay, the one that plays when you play Heroes versus whatever in that
Oh
one
yeah.
mode on the 2005 Battlefront 2.
Actually, as a sidebar about that, Andrew, I was playing Battlefront 2. We had some friends over the other night, and we were playing split screen. And some of us hadn't played the game before, weren't that familiar with it, and so I put us on the Jabba's Palace map where the Gamorrean guards are walking around, and
Uh-huh.
they're a lot of fun because in Battlefront 2 they are this unaligned faction that just isn't
That's
happy
right.
about rebels or stormtroopers being in the palace. So they are really hard to kill, but if they hit you, they one shot you. So they just walk around really slowly like a slasher villain, just whacking you with an axe and moving on. And there's
Okay. Which was I'm trying to think of. Was it Battlefront 1 or 2 where like you could actually get killed by the Sarlacc? Or was it a Rancor? I think it's a Rancor, right?
actually both.
I'm
You
trying
can
to.
do the Dune Sea in Battlefront 1, the 2004 one. And there's a big
Okay.
Sarlacc pit that you can fall into. It's not the same one. It's just like a random one out in like this imagined part of
Oh, okay.
Tatooine they came up with. But yeah,
Okay.
in the second one you can fall through the floor and land down with the Rancor. And I love the
That's what I was thinking.
yeah, and I love the Rancor because it's in line with what you're thinking about Bib Fortuna. For as much as there's the goofy and kind of like just weird tenor to the palace, there's also the horrifying one. And I think what makes this so alluring is that yeah, Jabba has all of these slaves that he exploits, and bunch of them that he tosses down to this big rancor that just lives down there to eat the people that Jabba throws down for amusement. And I love when Luke is down there and you see all of the different species that come and huddle around the grate up above and like
Mm-hmm.
watch down like they're spectating like a UFC match or something. I think that there's so much that indicates how Jabba operates without having a bunch of exposition, because Jabba's kind of always existed in the trilogy as this like nebulous threat. He's this big
Sure.
bad
Yeah.
crime boss. We don't know exactly what he's done. We don't know exactly what he does. We don't really know the nature of the relationship between Han and Jabba. We don't really know the nature of the relationship between Jabba and anybody. But I think
I mean, from the context, we kind of get that it's smuggling, right? That's what
yeah,
it's drugs, or well, if it's not drugs, it's some kind of smuggling, right? Because that's when Han mentions like, "Hey, even I get boarded too," right? So he's implying that yeah,
yeah.
he's like, "Oh, I dropped the first ship." He's like, "Yeah, he drops a first shipment at the site of Imperials or something, right?" So it's implied that like he's doing some kind of black market trading is what he
Yeah, they,
does.
they do some kind of black market trading, but there's also this weird jovial energy to Jabba where like he treats Han as a friend
Ho, ho, ho,
sometimes and
ho,
he's
ho, ho.
he's laughing, and I love when Leia arrives in disguise and takes out a thermal detonator. And we've got C3PO translating back and forth and says the bounty hunter wants 50,000 units. And Jeb asks, why would I give him so many credits? Because he's holding a thermal detonator. And you see Max Rebo hide, and you see Boba draw, and it's a big panic. And then Jabba just laughs. I think that
Doesn't Salacious Crumb like hide behind his tail or do
yeah,
something like that? Or...
it's such a fun exchange, and it goes to further, I think, build up the mystique of Jabba to where like he doesn't care about the fact that Leia is cooking a live thermal detonator right in front of him. What do you think about the plan overall, Andrew?
The plan?
Yeah, the plan
Is
to
it?
get Han back. What do you think about this? Because
Oh,
we see Lando pull the mask down a little bit, so we know he's here undercover.
yeah.
We know that that C-3PO and R2-D2 are in on the plan, but they didn't know that they were being given as gifts. And we've got Luke
Right.
prowling around, and Chewbacca is here, but he's chained up. And then we learn that we've got Leia under there. It's a whole big scenario. What do you make of their whole plan to get Han out?
I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good infiltration. Obviously, you have Lando there as just a random guard. How he got hired, how he got slipped in, who knows? But he's there, right? He's already there from the big get go. He's like, he has his little cool. I actually like the little teeth on the little visor
Yeah.
thing on the little mask. I think it's actually a cool. I think it's actually a cool design. I like Leia's like as a is it Bosch, right?
Yeah.
That Bosch. I don't remember the name of the character, right? They like the and then like even like the audio, it's like kind of like I like how they change the voice and like it's not even like it's not even Galactic Basic. It's like some other kind of language or something. Um, I like how Luke is smart enough to know because C3PO kind of just bumbles and just says things without really thinking. Like he's not gonna give C3PO the full plan. I think that's kind of funny how like C3PO can't be trusted with the full plan just because he just likes to talk. He talks too much, sorry. So you can't like have him know everything. So like the whole R2 reveal, he's like I like to give you these two droids. They'll serve you well. And like he's like, what did you say? What do you say? Like you're like R2, you're playing like the wrong message or something, right? Like they kind of turn on each other. That classic slapstick kind of Laurel and Hardy thing they have going on. I like that. But yeah, they infiltrate from various ways. We got Lando doing something. You got Leia trying to slip in as another bounty hunter, and then sneaking around at night, making sure everyone's like passed out and asleep and everything. Right, you have Chewbacca kind of going in, like he's gonna be a prisoner. It's very reminiscent of like A New Hope, where he does the same thing where Han puts the shackles on him. He's like, I think I know what he's trying to do here, right? It's almost the exact same thing, right? Except this time way more convincing because he really is like in shackles.
Yeah.
And just trying to get everybody. It's like trying to set up the board, so to speak, to get everybody in the right position. And then they still get found out. They Jabba's still somehow smarter than they are. Figures it out, right? Han gets thawed. You're blind from the hibernation sickness. It'll pass, and then the ho. He's like, I recognize that laugh. Right? Pulls back the curtain. Everybody's there, even just like the random like passerbys, the standby people. They're all in on it, right? Guards show up, press capture everybody basically, right? We have Luke show up. Now full on Jedi master mode, right? Comes in. Like he does whether it's dark side or not, the little choke right on the Marine guards. I think like do the little squealing thing, right? I'm like this is clearly before the rules of what's considered dark side and light side and all that, right? Dark side at this point is only just the lightning, really. I guess the choke's more like a universal neutral kind of thing. But anyways, so he goes in, right? Bib Fortuna shows up. Easily just does the you serve your master well, like you will lead me to John. Like, all right, he just kind of goes along with it, and then Jabba gets all pissed off, like you fool, like use a Jedi mind, like in his Huttese language, we can hear like Jedi clearly. And I like the idea of like borrowed language. I think that's really cool. Just like in real life, you have words to borrow. So he'll say bantha, but then poodoo is like clearly like crap or whatever, right? So I like how they do that. They kind of like. There's some words that are just universal no matter what space language you're speaking, right? So you hear like Jedi and all that, right? So, and then all right, that's right. I'm sorry, I always go off track. You're asking me about the plan. I like the idea of Luke setting up all these pieces ahead of his arrival. He knows he tries to do the thing where he appeals to Jabba's greed, right? Like that's like his weakness supposed to be. And like whole like your mind tricks don't work on me, and drops him into the. C3PO tries to warn him about the Rancor pit, gets cut off or whatever. Falls in, has no weapons, right? He uses the rock, or it was a bone, right? He jams like this big old like bone in front of the Rancor's mouth. Throws a rock to close the gate on him, which is really clever and stuff. And then we get the very emotional Rancor handler come out. It's very odd just because that character doesn't really have a speaking role, but I feel like we kind of linger on him for a lot more than we would like a regular random character. I think it's weird. I don't know why George decided to include the whole cry, and then he gets consoled by another guy. And like it's just really goofy. I think it's really goofy. But yeah, I like the plan. We're getting everybody into position, and then we of course have like the sail bars, right? The whole thing with him, He's like, this is your last chance, Jabba. Like free us or be destroyed. And clearly, like, I mean, from Jabba's point of view, I get it. Like you're kidding me, right? Like, look at the position you're in. Like, you're gonna be telling me what to do, and then like, he does a cool little backwards flip. R2 shoots out lights. I mean, I'm skipping a lot of the stuff. Obviously, I'm skipping a lot of the other stuff. One of my favorite lines in the whole trilogy is where Han still can't see and they're being escorted. And Luke's like, oh, there's not much to see. It's just a lot of sand. He's like, I grew up here. And then Han's like, you're going to die here. Convenient, huh? Like, I love that exchange where even in the face of danger, Han's just kind of like, I gotta land those lines. I gotta hit him with those quips.
This is another aside, but I've always thought that it would be funny if Jerry Seinfeld played Han in this movie. Because there's a very like Seinfeld sense of humor to a lot of the lines that I think is funny. Like I can see Jerry Seinfeld. If I close my eyes, I can imagine Jerry Seinfeld saying the whole "I'm gone for a couple weeks and everybody gets delusions of grandeur" moment,
He's like, Luke's a Jedi.
yeah,
Yeah. Han's like filling him in. I mean, Chewie's like filling him in. Yeah.
it's a different tone. It's a different tone. Obviously, Han has always been quippy, and he's more quippy in the second film. But if we think about Han as more of a straight up jokester in this movie, and we think about the inherent goofiness of this first section, it's very different than Hoth. The whole sail barge sequence is in some ways like a whole total 180, and that goes to also Boba Fett's death, which is totally accidental. Han, Boba Fett, where? Whack. It's something that I don't find myself bothered by, because I think that this movie does a good job of also having the darker moments that I feel like are just sort of plopped in here. They're interspersed, not to the point where they are overpowering, but they're these rare, like, sobering moments. I think that the sadness of the Rancor's Keeper is a great example for me, or the long shot during the Battle of Endor when we see the two Ewoks running away and then one gets killed and the other looks back and goes to say, "Hey, come on, get up, we gotta go," and realizes that he's fucking dead, and he falls down, and, like, buries his head in his chest. I'm like, there are these sad moments here that I think make me appreciate the tone of this movie a lot, because I think that George Lucas was striking a very deliberate balance of the jokes and the slapstick and the humor and the lightheartedness with these moments of heart, and obviously the heaviness and the brooding anger of the entire throne room confrontation. I think it all works really well. So I don't really take issue with the Boba Fett death, just because it's silly, but there's a lot of this movie that isn't. So I like it. I agree with you. I like the whole heist and breakout.
I think for one scene that kind of stands out when you mentioned about like kind of darkness is like that whole scene where Leia's just choking Jabba seems like very violent. I think for Star Wars, it's very, because it's not quick. It's like he's like, you see his tail like, you know, wriggling, like Jesus Christ. Like it's very, and she's just like heaving, and he's just and the tongue sticking out and everything. I was like as a kid, I didn't really think about it too much, but I'm like, in a galaxy where deaths are quick by lasers and blasters and stuff, like, we linger on his very slow, you know, suffocation. He's being killed like very slowly and very like agonizing. And I'm just like, huh, that's kind of weird, because we don't really linger on deaths. They're very instantaneous. So yeah, and then of course you're right, the Ewoks, and like, you know, he like kind of rolls him over. I'm like, oh, like that always kind of makes me like, I don't tear up, but I'm like,
it's just sad. It's a bummer. I think the reason it works is because, and why I love this movie overall, is that it really does encapsulate all the different moods of Star Wars. You have the goofiness, you have the seriousness, and you have the spiritualism of the Jedi with this sort of more pulpy, serialized adventure and action and adventure. And I think it's all in this movie in a really unique way. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say one of my favorite Han moments. I mean, we're gonna get to it eventually, but I love when he leads them outside of the base, and then they're surrounded by the rebel, and he kind of just like it says so many things, kind of like, you should have known better, or like, whoops, like there's like so many different ways you can interpret that, but it's just very Han, like, where he's like this was intentional kind of thing. I love that. Also the one guy's like, freeze, and he just throws like this box at the dude. Yeah. And we get that Wilhelm scream as he goes over the rail. like there's a lot more comedy in this movie than I actually remember upon rewatching it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, this movie is actually I'm thinking back to like Empire Strikes Back. It's much more somber, much darker,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like that what do you call it, the night is darkest right before the light kind of thing, right? Where I feel like thematically Empire Strikes Back is much darker, but yeah, here we have like a lot of like I don't know if it's also just visually there's just a lot of sunlight maybe in this film because there is a lot of light.
Yeah.
There's a lot of I mean, the only dark scenes are really in the Emperor's throne room, but really, like, it's just it's just a very comedic kind of the trilogy of the original trilogy. I think it's the funniest one in a way. So
Yeah, I want to just very quickly take us back to the very beginning of the movie because we did skip over one thing. We actually begin with a shot that is not too far off from the first shot of A New Hope. We start underneath the Star Destroyer. But this Star Destroyer is headed to deploy a shuttle that's going to land on the second Death Star. And
that's right.
A moment that I really love in that whole sequence is when
the Emperor's coming here.
Yeah, we've got that because it stems from Vader giving the deck officer kind of essentially reprimanding him and saying you're behind schedule, and the Emperor doesn't look kindly on that. What I like about this moment, and it's something I'd been reflecting on particularly this time watching it because of all of the conversation we've had over the course of Mando Season 3 and Ahsoka and Andor, talking about the ways that like they sow the seeds of the Empire's fall or the sow the seeds for what happens in the sequel trilogy. Along those lines, I really like the detail of the Empire's already falling behind here. And I think it contextualizes a little bit this idea that this small band of rebels and this scrappy little fleet can do the job again. The Empire's been put on their back foot. They're behind on production. They're disorganized. You know, the Emperor has to come intervene, and Vader has to be an errand boy to say you're behind schedule. I like this. I think it nicely sets us up for the eventual defeat. I think it shows that the Empire has actually been shaken by the rebellion, which is a really important detail, I feel.
I just like that the idea of like, what do we do now? Is like, let's just do the thing again.
Yeah.
Let's just do the same thing again. Let's just do another Death Star, another one. Are we gonna change anything? Is it still gonna have a weakness in the center? Like, yeah, it's all gonna stay. That's all gonna stay the same. Yeah, pretty much. Like, just like. It's just like, let's just do the same thing again. And like I've seen so many like riffs on that. Like I saw this funny little comic where someone was supposed to be like the accountant for like the Empire or something, like a financial advisor, and it's like, I don't know if doing the same thing twice makes sense. Like, oh man, we're gonna get the money for all this again. It's just like I like the, I guess you can, I don't know if you want to think into it, it's like the Empire's just very stubborn. They're just very set in their ways, very archaic, very kind of just like, let's just do the same thing again, and maybe now we'll throw a shield around it this time, so like you can't even approach it yet. We'll just throw a shield around it, like let's just do, everything else is the same, but we're gonna add an extra layer of security, and that's really about it, really. So I love that. I love how the line with the guy's like, we'll double our efforts, and it's like, if I heard that, I'm thinking like, oh, so you only been doing like half productivity, or what? Are you even gonna double your efforts? Like you weren't trying this whole time, basically, is what they're saying. I just love that shot too, of like you have all these like these garrison, all these troops just like waiting for them. And if you watch the again, as a kid, I don't know what's real, what's not real, but like I love watching the ILM doc on Disney Plus, where they show that like the majority, all of those troops are actually just hand drawn, which I thought was really cool. That one scene from like where they're just standing and the shuttle's there and there's like no action going. Those are all hand drawn, and I was like you could have fooled me and told me like they got all these like 50, 60 extras or whatever in that one scene.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
So I just love the descent, the steam coming out of the ramp. He shows up, and like everyone's like all like trying to be all serious and stuff. I just love that whole scene, and like, you know, you're right. He says like, oh, the Emperor's not as forgiving as I am. Like, and it's like we already know Vader just straight out kills people for like no reason. So imagine that extra layer of like horror removed, that like, oh, he's not as forgiving and he just kills people. So like, can you imagine the Emperor's even less tolerant of like, you know, ineptitude. So I just love, I can't believe we just skipped past that scene, but you're right. I do like the whole kind of setting up of like, this is where we're at. This is where the Empire's at. Meanwhile, our heroes are dealing with a drug lord somewhere else.
Yeah, I also think I think it works because the Emperor is still a question mark to people at this point in the saga. Who really is the Emperor? And so this little foreshadowing here, I think, really works. And just to the point about having a second Death Star in the first place, it doesn't bother me. I've never been bothered by it. I understand how some people look at it and are like, it's not creative. They're just rehashing. But I feel like there's a big difference between reusing the Death Star and reusing the Death Star again for Starkiller Base. Because I
Third time's the charm, Abram. Third time is the charm.
one of them, in this case, to me, is kind of a natural conclusion of, well, shit, if we have a weapon that can destroy planets, we should... That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We should make one. We should make another one of those and try to correct our mistakes. But it wouldn't. It wouldn't be like if you want to apply some sort of realism to how the Emperor and the Empire operates. It wouldn't be like, damn, that was a really cool idea, but we made a little mistake. Forget about it. Come up with a different one.
That's the thing
Yeah.
here. It's not so much that we're gonna build another planet destroyer.
Yeah.
It's that we're gonna build it with the same exact weakness again.
Yeah.
And I know
That's fair.
I know they have the shield. I know they have the shield generator. I get that they have the shield generator, right?
Yeah.
It's on the planet, so they can't do anything from space. Like I get that, but it's like you really couldn't just like craft like another. I don't know, just another layer around the like. Don't have it just open, exposed through all these tunnels. You know what I mean? It's not so much the planet destroying.
Yeah.
Thing. You're right. Like you can't go much higher than that, right? Like that's already peak like weaponry, right? It's just the same design. It's another sphere. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
you're right. I mean, there is no doubt an inelegance to the writing in that respect, and I think that there is generally an elegance to some of the writing elsewhere. Like, again, I think that starting the film with a very similar shot is kind of telling of how it feels like Star Wars is already starting to play in its own ideas. Another one that I've always never really been crazy about is the repeating of the "I love you, I know" refrain on Endor. I think to me it just reads too much like a direct callback to a really good line of dialogue than like an authentic feeling moment, because I don't think that Leia would act that way. I think why that scene works so well in Empire is because Han would say "I know," and I get that they're laughing with each other, playing with each other, but I do think that there are moments of this movie, be it the Death Star having the exact same weakness, be it the dialogue repeated, be it going back to Tatooine, whatever, where I do think that there is a little bit of back padding that I don't think kind of pushes the story along. And I think it is foreshadowing some of the symptoms and weaknesses of Star Wars to come. Again, it doesn't bother me to any great extent because this is my favorite Star Wars movie and probably my fifth favorite movie ever. It's just outside my Letterboxd top 4. It was there. They got kicked off by Parasite, so it's now 5. But yeah, I don't know. I see the criticisms of this movie. I get it. I get why people say this is the beginning of where Star Wars starts to dip. I just don't really feel it because I think that there's so much good heart and spirit to the movie elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, we're not there yet, but like, I think when I think of the original trilogy, it's that whole Luke and Vader at the end thing. That is just so powerful from an emotional standpoint, not just like visually with the choreography and everything. It's by far the best lightsaber. I think probably one of the best lightsaber fights of the whole series.
Yeah, I agree.
As a whole. But just the music and then the whole exchange, right? All that stuff leading up to it, like I sense the good in you still, Father, and like it's too late for me, son. Like that whole like, I don't know, that whole exchange and leading up and later and like, you know, the flip switch and all that. Like I think you're right. I think it is. I mean, there's good stuff in A New Hope, and then I think Empire Strikes Back is where we kind of get a little more emotional, a little more heavy, and then this one has that whole third act. No matter where you are, whether you're on Endor, whether you're, you know, like I feel the danger for Lando as he's trying to buy time, and we see the ships getting blown up by one, and they're still waiting on the shield generator, like all that stuff going on. Like like, even though I already know the outcome, like, I still, I do feel a little of the pressure. I do feel a little pressure, and I do feel like some, like you're saying, like that heavy baggage, the emotion there. Um, so right, so we have, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else about that beginning, or
No,
so we
yeah.
have, they blow up the sail bars, right? Leia turns the cannon around, points it at the deck. Boba falls over. C-3PO and R2 fall over for some reason too. They get picked up upside down. I love the part where Lando is like hanging on, and Han's aiming, and I was like a little higher, because he's still like kind of blind. He doesn't want to get shot by Han, so he tells him to aim a little bit higher for the tentacle. I love that. I love that moment. The Luke, of course, takes out the green lightsaber for the first time. You know why it's green though, right, Abram? Do you remember why it's
I
green?
don't know if I do.
So the reason why it's green, other than being a different lightsaber, is it George, because the sky is shown so much right there
I
on
see.
Tatooine,
Yeah.
the blue sky. He didn't want the blue lightsaber to be like against the blue backdrop to kind of just like get lost, right? So that was the main reason why it's green. So I have my green lightsaber right over there.
Nice.
So and right, so we leave. We settle Han's debt permanently, right? We get out of there. Han's rescued. Again, we're doing the split off thing where again Luke has to go to Dagobah, right? He's like, I'll catch up with you guys later. Catches up with the crew much faster than he
Yeah.
did in Empire Strikes Back, right? He goes back. Yoda's like in bed. He's just. I like the line where Luke's like you can't die, and Yoda's like, strong I am with the Force, but not that strong.
He also says, which I really love, when you live to be 900 or so, look this good you will not, which I always think is good. I'm curious what you make of this portion on Dagobah overall, Andrew, because we talked about this in our discussion of Empire, and our mixed feelings on Dagobah there. I'm not that moved by Dagobah in this film. I think for me it's kind of a lower point because I don't feel like we gain that much out of it. Interestingly, to me, it's largely an affirmation of what Luke already knows. It's sort of like it's like a debrief on how things went on Bespin, essentially, and then obviously Yoda passes, and we have the exchange with Obi-Wan, but I don't know. I think that it feels less rich than our visit in Empire.
I mean, we don't get all we get philosophical in a different way. It's not about the nature of the Force here. Rather, here it's about. I mean, I love that line where Luke tells him, he's like, this is kind of verbatim, or not exactly word for word, but he tells him about like why didn't he tell them Vader was his father, or and he is like, well, I told you that Darth Vader killed your father, and so he ceased to be Anakin Skywalker. So what I said is true from a certain point of view, right? And he's like, a certain point of view? He's like, Luke, you will realize that a lot of the truths that you hold on to are, don't know the exact quote, but it's basically saying that like a lot of your beliefs, a lot of what makes like you who you are, is going to be kind of based on your specific view, right? There's a lot of, they say there's like three sides to the truth. There's yours, there's his, and then there's, the third objective, right? So like it's not. I get what you're saying, where it's not as important, but I do think for the overall I think it's a very strong message.
Sure.
I think that's probably one of the most universally accepted things, is that your perception of the truth, or what you consider to be true, is very, very highly influenced by your upbringing, your lens into like what you're seeing, right? So I know Obi-Wan's kind of being coy and kind of like dancing around it, and kind of he's just being very obtuse, really, but I think he makes complete sense. I love that whole little exchange, and like, and then of course when he's talking to Yoda, he's like, so it's true then, like I am a Jedi, and Yoda's like, no, like first like you have to face the Emperor, like then like only with the Force as your ally, and like he's thinking like, okay, I did all the training, like that's all there is, and like Yoda's kind of like, no, like there's still more growing, there's more things you have to do to like really truly finish, in the absence of official Jedi trials, like this is your trial kind of by fire kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I it's not as deep as like the like oh, I don't believe it, like that's why you feel it's not as deep as the Empire Strikes Back stuff, like you're saying. Like it is kind of just, we're retreading and kind of just confirming things, but I do think it's important to get that across. Sure. Not, I mean, to Luke, but also I guess to to the audience also. But like I feel like it's one of those less is more situations, sure, where it's less Dagobah, but we get much more done with less of that time in there.
let's kind of tie the knot on this whole plot thread and kind of jump ahead to a later moment of Endor, when Luke and Leia have their interaction, wherein Luke is kind of preparing Leia for if he's killed on the Death Star, and cluing her into, in so many words, the fact that she is force sensitive and she is his sister.
My father has it. Right? No, the whole line.
Yeah, my father has it. Father was strong in it. I'm strong in it, and sister is too, or whatever. What do you think about this element of the movie?
I remember as a kid the whole like reveal that like Luke and Leia are related. I thought as a kid that was really weird just because this is how ignorant 7-year-old Andrew is. Where I'm like they don't look like each other. Like I just look at them. I'm like he has blonde sandy hair. She has like not. So I was like obviously they're actors, right? They're actors. But as a kid I just thought that was kind of weird. And it wasn't until later I was a teenager watching these movies again on the DVD, the whole realization like oh like they kiss, like that's kind of weird. But I really didn't think about that when I was a kid, right? I was like, but just the whole like the way he's like why like he's very obtuse about it, right? Like he kind of speaks in riddles about it. Like he doesn't tell Leia straight out. I mean he does eventually, right? He says like you're my sister, and then the problems this creates later on with the whole like do you remember your mother Leia, and like oh yeah she was always not really kind of she's like I remember she was always sad and stuff, and it's like it's not clear if she's talking about Padme. I think she's supposed to be talking about Padme, but it could be also her like stepmother. Like it this is that part where that one part of Star Wars that like doesn't get retcon, and so it's just very ambiguous, and it's just just an odd scene. They're getting the moonlight, they're on this little wooden bridge, and just the whole the whole way that scene goes down, and like Luke is like I have to face him, like I gotta go off, I gotta go face him and stuff, and Leia's like no, like we can help you, like he's like no, I gotta do this on my own. Like okay, we get it. That's like the hero's journey, right? We get that. But just that whole exchange, and even more now in retrospect, now having seen all the other movies surrounding this one, like it's just a very odd scene, and I feel like it really doesn't do anything really for the film.
Yeah.
The whole like okay, she's your sister, but what changes? Nothing really changes, right? Like it's just kind of, I guess I think for me partly it's a vehicle to pave the way for Han and Leia to be together in a way that doesn't make Luke seem like he's left out. Like oh no, we're siblings. Like it's cool. I think it's like a weird messy way to resolve that love triangle. I think it's mostly what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is. I think it is the result of a writing mistake made 2 movies prior. Ultimately, because I agree with you. I think that we materially gain nothing out of the revelation that they are siblings, other than a like exit ramp for the relationship drama, which is fine. It's better this way, I think, but I think it's just it's like square peg in a round hole. Like you can bash it through, but it just feels inelegant. I think in general, Leia's force sensitivity to me has always felt like an inelegant part of the entire saga, and how little it's sort of reckoned with or expanded upon. Obviously, saved
even later in the film, later in the sequel trilogy, you don't think it's really handled properly?
I think it's definitely better there, but even then, we get into the whole Leia fucking flying through space thing, which we'll talk about in due course. But I think that this is like one of the Leia's force sensitivity, the relationship between them. It's just this really lingering problem that I think so many different writers have been unable to aptly address.
For what it's worth, though, Aram, I do think it kind of. I think it does serve another purpose later on, where Vader kind of uses that knowledge as sort of as kindling for Luke to kind of get him to react, right? He's like, sister, like, right? He has like that line. I think that's like the one instance where that's like like now you got to Luke's sore spot where now he's not hiding, now he's giving into that rage, right? Yeah. I think it does serve that one instance, and that's about it, really.
Before we get to the encounter in the throne room, because I think that's probably a good place to end our conversation, I think we had to talk about the rest of Endor kind of as a whole. and I must begin with the ultimate question, which is, what do you think about Ewoks?
I think they're cute. I like Ewoks. I remember as a kid, I was like, I want one as a pet. I adore Ewoks. I think they're funny. I like the jump jump. I like the I think there's some kind of like they're cute, but they almost eat the protagonist. So like I don't know. Like I feel kind of weird about them now. I think I like the how they're all cautious and they quickly just like Leia and kind of just take her in. Where do they get clothes for her? Who cares? We don't know. We don't know where they find this clothes for her. Who does her hair? We don't know. It doesn't matter, right? But just the like they kind of like fall for Leia. I do like the idea of like them viewing C-3PO as a god.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the whole like the Aztec scene, like the Europeans come across and like they have red hair, just like our gods who have flaming, like a flaming head kind of thing, right? I think that's kind of funny where like C-3PO fits the description of like some kind of entity to them, and then like right, like the little chanting they do. I love the whole Chewie thinking with the stomach kind of thing, the little trap that gets sprung. I love like the outfits, just the outfits they put on this green cool, all their like camouflage outfits they have for Endor. Like I love, and we talked about this with Empire also, but I just love how okay, new ecosystem or new planet, new biome. All right, let's switch up the outfits. Give everybody, give everyone like these kind of like I forget what they're called. We have a word for them in Spanish, but it's like the blanket with the hole. Ponchos. There you go. They got these like little ponchos. That really weird helmet that Leia has is like very like kind of like a half circle smooth thing. He takes it off. Like he thinks it's a weapon. No, it's just a helmet. Takes out some crackers. Right, gives it to the Ewoks. They're like curious. I love their house, their tree houses. I always thought that was such a cool like set piece. Is the tree houses the one where they kind of like do like the little like Tarzan swing between them and stuff, and oh my god, and then like the little baby Ewoks, like the Ewoks are cute enough, and they have the even smaller like the little they look like hamsters or something, right? Like they're just cute. I love the I especially am very fond of the scene where C-3PO is relaying to them the entire story of the series up to this point with complete with sound effects and everything, and they're just like entranced. Like they're kind of like there's like a part where like one of them the mom's covers like the baby's face, like oh like you're not supposed to see this kind of thing. Like I think the Ewoks are really cool. They're definitely way more interesting than Porgs are. I'll tell you that, and probably one of the more interesting sub species that we see in Star Wars. I'm trying to think. We have Gungans and the Geonosians in the prequels that really I mean they don't I mean the Gungans they serve a purpose, right, the story, but I think they're of the allied species with the main hero kind of niche they fill. I love the Ewoks. I love their ingenuity of how they have, and we know this the whole Viet Cong kind of analogy of using tree trunks to take out ATSTs and rolling logs and like the whole like guerrilla warfare where we'll use primitive things to overcome advanced civilizations or whatever. Like it's cute, it's clever, but I think Ewoks are one of the better inclusions into the franchise overall. I've as a disclaimer, I've never seen the two Ewok movies, the
I haven't either.
Caravan of Courage, and I forget what the other one's called. I've never seen them. From understanding, they're not that great anyways. We're not really missing much, but I mean, no one else can say that they have two whole separate side movies in the Ewoks. So
and they got a whole TV
take
show
that for what it is. That's right. Yeah, that's right. They did have a little cartoon show.
Yeah, I really like the Ewoks. I've always really liked the Ewoks because they like Jabba's palace and the creatures within it. They've got that two sides to them. I agree with you. They're these, even just in their design, they're these little fuzzy teddy bear guys, but they're also kind of like weird when you look at them. They got these big dead black eyes and these like almost beaver looking teeth. They're cute, but kind of in the way that like an ugly dog is cute. And I really like that. I think that they are very distinct, and then you add in the way they move. I love the way they move. I love how they have to hop to get up on logs and get in, and how they got to clamber all over stuff. I think they're really fun just to watch on screen, and they do invite so many fun moments. And you've named so many of the greatest ones. I really like Wicket kind of prodding at Leia and not understanding her and poking her with the spear and taking the food and all of that. I love when we're actually assaulting the shield generator and the first Ewok runs out to steal a speeder bike to lead the guards away. There's great little moments like that. Getting to learn more about their culture, as you're saying, through the architecture of their homes and their sort of like religious reverence for C-3PO. I've always loved when Luke makes C-3PO float using his magic. Yeah, I think that they're really endearing and then quite formidable. I love how tactile all their weapons are. Again, the logs, the little gliders, all of their catapults.
Oh yeah, that paraglider thing is
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
I love when they got like the rocks on the string and they throw them at the stormtroopers, and then we get the insert shot of Wicket like spooling his up and he hits himself in the head and falls over. Again, really just good, solid slapstick humor. I think that the Ewoks add a really rewatchable quality to the entire Endor part of the movie.
I like the. I don't know all the names, but I like the black one that has like that stripe kind of going
Yeah.
on. Kind of. For some reason, reminds me of Koba from the Planet of the Apes movies, kind of a little bit. Like, I like how they have like the different designs too. There's like some of them are much more chipmunk looking, like the little chubby cheeks, like more like there's like a one's like solid brown, just solid brown with a more. It has like much more like pitch black kind of eyes, and yeah, like the whole culture, and it kind of just makes me wonder. I'm like, where do like how they set up the trap? I'm like, what are they hunting for when they catch Chewbacca? Like they don't know that Chewbacca is like a thing, right? Like the whole like I don't know. They're like they're very like you said, they're very mysterious. Where like they're primitive, but then like they clearly have the intelligence to like build like these these big tree houses, right? They have some kind of tools, right? They have like very basic stone and like kind of Bronze Age weaponry, and but like they're able like they're very useful. Like I mean, it's kind of like that Jar Jar kind of like usefulness where it's
Yeah.
like kind of you're clumsy to a but in a beneficial way, right? There's like like you mentioned, like there's like Ewok that gets on the speeder bike and then Han's kind of pissed off that he's like kind of fumbling, but then when he flies off, he like takes all these other guards with him and kind of leaves the base like sort of more exposed. And Han's like, oh, like what do you know? Like it kind of worked out. Like the little guy, like I don't know if it was a plan or intentionally or is this his curiosity got the best of him, but like it's kind of like that failing upwards kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
another great example of that is when they end up in the cockpit of the ATSC and don't really know what to do. I think that's a ton of fun. The entire Battle of Endor, I think, is just really well put together, in that it's this great tug of war as to who's on top at any given moment. The being disoriented and the scout troopers initially escaping the speeder bikes into the speeder bike chase, gaining the upper hand back, losing it, gaining it back, waves of the Ewoks doing great and then them being wiped out. And I think that just on a filmmaking level, it keeps you super engaged as a viewer, because it seems like there's always a chance the plan just doesn't materialize. And I really love that, and I think that whole sense of urgency is heightened by the fleet arriving into the Emperor's trap, and the shot of the massive fleet of TIE fighters attacking, and the calm chatter, and Admiral Akbar desperately trying to pull the fleet back, and Lando pleading for just a little bit more time. It's just
say it, Abrams. Say the line, Abrams.
It's a trap. It's very good.
Thank you.
They do a great job of orchestrating these little moments that just builds the tempo of this real frantic struggle. I think it's really expertly done.
We kind of skipped it because we kind of skipped the whole United Rebel plan, Bothan stuff. But we have Mon Mothma show up. As a lot of fans point out, the only one other woman besides Leia in the entire trilogy. Besides, if you don't count Aunt Beru, I guess,
Yeah.
where she's like the only other major female character of any importance that shows up authority figure wise, and I like the how Lando has this little growth arc. He has this little arc from Empire Strikes Back where he went from a self-serving mining, businessman who's like in cahoots with the Empire because it's beneficial to him, and now he's like, he gets promoted to general, right? He's a general now, and Han kind of makes fun of him, calls him like he's like dignified now. And I love the whole like where Han kind of looks at the Falcon and like he's like, why do I get the feeling that I'm not going to see her again? And it's almost kind of foreshadowing in a way, but it's not because Han makes it right. He survives. But that line reminds me of how I'm sure you know this, Abraham, that originally they wanted Han to die. Like Han was supposed to die in this film, and then George just kind of felt like it needs to have a very good feeling, happy ending.
Yeah.
And like Harrison Ford like really wanted Han to just be killed off. He thought like that would make his character more important. And I wonder if that was like a holdover or like something that was left over, that line where he says like, I'm not sure, I get the feeling I'm just not going to see her again. And he does end up seeing her. He's like, won't you get going, you space spire? Like Lando like, commandeers, he takes the Falcon. He has that really hilarious little co-pilot. I forget, Nian. I cannot say his right, but like, just the whole like the like his little like hanging cheeks. Like I love that character. He's like so in so little of the film, but he's like when I think of Return of the Jedi, he's like probably one of the 3 or 4 characters I think of instantly.
Yeah,
because I just love his whole interaction with Lando, where like he's like, what do you mean the shield's up? How could they be shields be up if they don't know we're coming? Right, that realization, like pull out, right, as a trap and all that stuff. Like I love Nien Nunb. He's not as cool as Boba Fett, obviously, but he's one of those side characters that kind of gets more recognition in spite of the small role, because he's kind of just like Admiral Akbar, right?
Akbar's the exact same.
It's a trap. Yeah, so like I love the end up. I love the whole idea of Lando's now fully in. Now he's fully in on the rebellion. The Empire messed with his with his business, and now it's personal to him. Like I love the whole little arc that I feel kind of usually gets kind of overlooked with Lando. So.
Yeah, I think Lando's great. I love the. So you're a general now. When Han and Lando reunite aboard whatever the capital ship for the rebellion is at that point. I agree with you. And then the actual blowing up of the Death Star, it's not as exciting, I don't think, as it was in A New Hope. It's cool.
No.
Go for it.
I was gonna say I do love the scene leading inside the Death Star when they join the twists and the camera keeping up and all like the tunnels. I think it's way more far better than the trench run in the first one. I think.
Yeah, and then it is cool them escaping as it's blowing up behind them.
It's like right on their heels, just catching up right behind them. Yeah,
that is good. I think that's where maybe the novelty of it being a second Death Star is a little bit less cool, because dropping that ion torpedo, that's just. You can't really beat that, but the
Sure.
bobbing and weaving in and out is quite good. But the throne room,
yeah, it's about time we get there. Well, I mean, obviously he surrenders himself, right?
Yeah,
he surrenders himself. He's one of the Imperial guys is like, oh, we picked up this rebel. He was only armed with this, right? He presents a lightsaber. Darth Vader takes it to the side. He's looking at it. He's like, you constructed a new lightsaber. And he's like kind of admiring the craftsmanship and everything. And that's when, Luke name drops Anakin, and he has like, you can't see his expression, but he has like a very hostile reaction to the name, where like just hearing his name just stirs up bad feelings and bad memories of who that used to be for him, right? He's like that's I forget the line exactly, but it says something about like that's not him anymore, basically, that he got rid of that name, right? Like now he's just Vader all the way, right? And then he's like, I don't believe you'll turn me over. He's like, he's trying to call, and Vader calls his bluff, like, oh, like you don't think I will? Like, all right, you're gonna see right now, right? He takes him in the elevator, takes him straight to the Emperor, and he's like, hey, like we could have had something, but now you're gonna suffer like at the Emperor, and like you're gonna basically join us or die. And then so, all right, continue.
No, I think that tees up really nicely this interesting exchange between the Emperor, Vader, and Luke when we're all together in the room, and the Emperor is goading Luke and just having so much fun. I think that's always one of the key takeaways from the throne room for me, is that the Emperor, just as I've been saying the whole film does, I think the performance of the Emperor really embodies all these different facets of the character in the series, where he's ghoulish, and he's cackling, and he's devilish, and he's imposing, but he's also silly. I really like the Emperor's big dead grin as he's trying to get Luke to pick up the blade and strike him down.
You're right. I love all those lines. I mean, almost every line that the Emperor drops is like quotable. Like the "You want this, don't you?" Like he's like has his lightsaber and like he's like he tells him like looks out the window. It's like even now like the last vestiges of that rebellion, like you'll be about to wiped out. It's like all his lines. Everything has transpired according to my designs. Like I just love like all his lines, and I think some of it's just a very memeable growing up. Like a lot of those lines, again, parodies and pop culture and stuff, kind of making fun of just how like just creepy the Emperor overall is. The whole like you're saying like the grinning, the kind of like his eye. He doesn't really smile with his eyes. It's just with his just like he's like the cackling, the hunched over, he has like this kind of Mr. Burns thing going on, like it just the whole like he's just constantly like it's like you'll replace your father as my side, like, and Vader's just right there and he's just like he knows that like yeah, like this is the plan, like I'm very disposable, like that's my son, but the Emperor's the Emperor. Like that's what matters more. Like, I mean, thinking back to Empire Strikes Back, where Vader even tells like they had that exchange when we first see the Emperor, like chronologically, right? The big giant head, hollow, right? And he talks about like he's like, oh, like the son of Anakin Skywalker must not become a Jedi. He's like, what if he could be turned, right? Like, you make a powerful, that whole exchange where like Vader just very like like he's almost like disassociated in a way where he sees Luke not as his son, but just they refer to him as the son of Anakin Skywalker. Yeah. Like that's not him anymore, right? Like the whole like Vader's kind of just like he's just a husk. He's really just a husk of who he used to be, and like he doesn't see himself. It's almost like he's just very stoic, right? He kind of just sees Luke as a means to end. There's moments, right, when he's offering Luke like join me and together, he does, he understands the Sith code. He understands the way Sith do things. Like naturally, I'm supposed to want to replace my master and and start the whole cycle all over again or whatever, right? But he's very until the very last moment. Of course, he kind of just goes along with it, where he knows this is his role to play. And Luke is basically just a tool or instrument as an ends to a mean kind of thing, or means to an end. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm really moved by how you have Vader and you have the Emperor, who both have their motivations that align in some ways, are at cross purposes in other ways. But then you have Luke, who is just still, as much as we see him refined into this role of master, still unrefined emotionally, and seeing his anger begin to overtake him as he does draw and he starts just beating on Vader with his saber. And I love the shot of obviously the blades clashing in the Emperor's face, lit by both, and he is laughing. I like watching Luke have to try to figure out how he feels about this whole scenario, and if he can even get his father back, and if it's all going to be for nothing as he's lying on the ground getting brutally electrocuted. You want to talk about another moment that feels dark for Star Wars? Him writhing on the ground as he's just getting burnt to death by the Emperor, I think is just an incredible moment.
Yeah, I mean, I love the I don't know the name of the track, the song that plays, but where we see the fight in the background from the position of like underneath the platform, right? We see like we're in the camera's like in the shadows of the platforms around the throne room, and we just see them scrolling kind of sideways, and like they're just Luke's gaining ground, right? He's kind of gaining ground, pushing Vader on the defensive, right? Does the where he like leaps out of the way, right? He leaps onto the platform when Vader's about to get him, and Vader does a little lightsaber throw. He's like, "You are unwise to lower your defense," right? He does a little thing, and Luke slides down, falls down, scrambles, hides for cover, and that's when Darth Vader starts playing the mind games, right? Kind of probing him, trying to like he's like talks about like he's looking for the thing that's gonna trigger him, right? And then that's when he's like, I can read. He's like, oh, your thoughts dwell on your friends and all that, right? And the whole, like we talked about earlier, the whole like, sister, so you have a sister, and if you won't join me, perhaps she will. And that's when Luke is like, no, comes out, right, fight, yada yada yada. Overly beats him to the point where Vader has to like lean now on the railing, right? He's like barely holding up now, and then Luke does the cuts off his arm, and then we had like that realization, like, oh, like just like me, like he also doesn't. Turns out the Skywalkers have a legacy of like losing arms,
Yeah.
right? So Vader falls over. He's like now like on life support. The little life support system's kicking in, and then of course we have like that moment where Luke's just looking at him with his arm off, and he's kind of like has that self-reflective moment, right? Of like, oh, like that's just like me, like, and kind of like again the connection right in him, like that's his father, right? They had like the same fate with the whole arm thing going on. And then like he beats him, right? He spares him, turns around to the Emperor and tells him like and he's like, no, like you failed, like I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And he's like, so be it, Jedi, right? Just a little lightning, and it's very silly. And I mean, haven't seen this movie so many times. I always find it odd that like Luke, why would you throw your lightsaber away?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that, right? One of my favorite like little jokes about this is there's like a little comic that I saw someone made where it's like Luke before he leaves Obi-Wan's ghost on Dagobah. He said, "Do you have any tips for the Emperor?" He's like, "Whatever you do not throw away your lightsaber. That thing will block his lightning, and you won't be able to do anything. Don't throw away." And of course, the thing he does is throw the lightsaber away, leaving himself defenseless. But I mean, that's the catalyst, right? Seeing Luke's struggle is what finally snaps Vader out of his little Sith-like trance, right? Is like he sees his offsprings like writhing and smoking and like his willingness to basically sacrifice himself to do what to not no matter what, he will not be used as a tool, right? He would rather die than join the Emperor, and that's the kind of like, I guess, snap moment that Vader needed, where like this is it, like I can't let this happen to my son, like this is like no, like now I have to get rid of the Emperor, right? Comes in, sneaks behind him, right? Picks him up somehow with only one arm, right? One other arm can't is a stub now, but
True.
Picks him up, tosses him into the reactor core, explodes, right? Emperor just dissolves, just instantly disintegrates, right? And if we don't talk about the other stuff later on, this is where the movie basically ends, right? If we don't talk about the revived Emperor and all that, right, this is kind of where things end, right? We get that exchange where he's like on life support, right? Luke kind of takes him. I love this moment, the whole all that stuff on the when he like like allow me to see you with my own eyes, right? Takes off the helmet and everything. And he's like oh, you like don't like we can make it, like I can like I can save you. He's like you already have, like oh he gets me with that, you already have.
Yeah, I love it. The I want to see with my own eyes is the moment that I feel resonates the most, because to put myself in the eyes of a viewer seeing that when it opened, we still don't really know what the nature of Darth Vader is, what is going on under that helmet. And so to remove the helmet and see his weak smile, I think is beautiful. And we come to realize that he is just a man. He is an old and somewhat feeble looking man. I think it's a beautiful choice to remove the helmet there and humanize him that way.
And I love the little music that plays too. It's like a much softer version of like the kind of the main theme with the, I don't know if it's like a, I don't think it's like no, it's not a triangle, but it's like the highest pitch like piano key kind of the thing, or like a harp. I think it's like a harp actually. It's much like a string instrument kind of plucking, but it's like that theme that like the main star, not the it's, I think it's the Imperial March, right? It's the Imperial March with a much softer, like higher pitch, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's very somber sounding. It's the Imperial March, but just much more somber. And I just love, like I'm not the world's biggest music aficionado, but I love how that just, it feels so right, so appropriate for that kind of like the Empire. This like imagine the sequels never happened. The Empire kind of going down with a whimper kind of thing going on. That's like the kind of tone, the feeling I kind of get. The Stormtrooper, like at this point, the base is already falling apart. Stormtroopers are running around. They completely ignore the Darth Vader and Luke are right there. I kind of just see it as like they're just very bit like they
least of the problems.
Survival mode. They're not. Exactly. They're just like trying to find a way to get off the ship. They're not even paying attention anymore, right? It's like self-preservations. But that whole moment, he's like tell your sister like you did like save me and all that, and just like, and then he just dies. And it's just very tragic. Like after all of this, like he finally gets to see his dad like as his dad properly, and it's over. That's just like, it's just a fleeting moment, and it's just. He gets his body on the Imperial shuttle, right? They get out of the docking bay in time. Gives him a proper little pyre, a little Qui-Gon Jinn-esque funeral pyre. And I'm kind of skipping the whole Death Star stuff, obviously, all the cool stuff with Wedge and Lando, and we're completely skipping Leia getting shot in the shoulder, and Han taking over the base and all that stuff. But just pretend we talked about it. So,
and then
unless you want to go back.
I think we well covered it. I mean, there's a lot of cool moments, and I do like the action. There's a great sense of action here, and seeing a large scale battle like this, even to a greater degree than Hoth, is really cool. Because we were mentioning last time that is it was the biggest battle at that point in time. And then we get Endor, and then Endor probably remains the biggest cinematic battle we see in Star Wars until Scarif in Rogue One. But yeah, I love all the heroism and dynamics between Han and Leia, and bringing R2 over to try to hack the door, and then him getting blasted and all his components and little hatches opening up. But
I love Han trying to do it, and he just closes more of the doors instead. He just makes it worse.
What do you think, Andrew, about the actual ending sequence? We're celebrating on the Forest Moon of Endor, and this is where the movie is quite different than how it originally was. So obviously we're superimposing Hayden Christensen into the scene.
Right.
We're going to Naboo, we're going to Coruscant, we're doing these big celebrations. Do you like that?
I love that.
Me too.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I love that because it one of the things I complain about the original trilogy is that it feels very empty. The universe feels, aside from like Jabba's palace and stuff like that, it feels because it's it's just not in the budget, and the technology's not there to show large crowds and stuff. But it feels very empty, and I love I think that adds a lot. Really, it adds a lot to the lore, but also just the wide galaxy wide sense of relief, right? Like it's like the Emperor's gone, right? And then, there's some other stuff later on. Like if you read the books, like it's like almost like a whole nother year until like they take all of Coruscant. Yeah. Basically, they got to pull it away from the remnants. But like the jubilation where the galaxy feels free, the music that starts playing, with the Ewoks singing, and then Lando's like embracing everybody, and of course the stormtrooper drum helmets, and I love all of that. I love the even the Hayden Christensen scene, which I think some people kind of feel kind of muddies it. It kind of sort of a lot of people love seeing Sebastian Shaw in that scene preferably, but I think we see so little of that character that I think swapping in Hayden Christensen I think does more for the series overall, where it kind of it's that extra little connective tissue that it really needs. The original, it's not the original actor, but like we never really saw him till the very end, so I feel like it's just kind of silly to be upset about that. I think because it's always been just Vader. It's always been just what we see on the outside until that moment, and just having Hayden there. I guess I understand why people are upset. Like why is Obi-Wan old, but then Anakin's like is his young ghost form or whatever, right? And there's some people that argue like, oh well, that's what he looked like when he was still a Jedi, kind of thing, right? That's kind of the inside baseball reason or whatever. But I do like the changes. It's very obvious that it doesn't fit with the rest of the film just because it's all like CGI and stuff. Like really, it's very clear that it's like if you were to watch this, my wife didn't watch it. She was busy with other stuff. But like I feel like anybody could tell that like, oh yeah, this was added on later clearly. And I think it works though. I like it. I like how it just kind of like, yeah, we don't get to see the reaction in the original of how the rest of the galaxy feels. Like, this victory in the original version just feels like an isolated victory because we don't know what the greater repercussions are for the rest of the galaxy at that moment.
Yeah.
Seeing the celebrations, the fireworks, all that kind of stuff, it kind of reminds me of Endgame. Like, after the movie wraps up, we see like fireworks and like that whole. If you remember that whole line about Tony Stark saying like, "Oh, there's like a much bigger." It's like it's not just the world; it's like a bigger universe kind of thing. It feels like that, very kind of definitive, very broad-reaching, very just like a nice little bow on everything. I think.
I agree completely. It goes back to my contested praise of the special editions overall. I really love that ending because it does connect us, as you're saying, to this greater sense of place, and I think it also just acknowledges that this isn't the end, right? And obviously, when George was making the special editions, he didn't know that this wasn't the end, in that there was going to be a 7, but he knew there was going to be a 1, and he wanted to make that cohesive in it. It's sort of interesting to wonder, like, if George had been directing episode 7, if it had been his script, if the Disney era had gone totally differently, and he would have done another special edition of this movie, would there be connective tissue in the other direction too? It's just an interesting hypothetical, because I think that the ending recognizes that there's so much more to do and to know. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, the version that's on Disney Plus that's everywhere is this already the second special edition, because Hayden Christensen obviously wouldn't, in 1996 he wouldn't have been cast.
Right.
Hayden Christensen was
Right.
I don't know, 12 at that point or whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it would be the second major revision because he does show up in the DVDs that came out like in 2004.
Yeah. Which is, it just makes me wonder if there had been one more, if there had been a third, if there would have been a little something going in the other way. But I agree with you. It just goes back to how I really am just in awe of George Lucas's ability to think on such a big scale. And that's just my takeaway, I think, from the trilogy on the whole, as we wrap up this portion of our, revisiting of the entire saga. It takes so much thought to realize all of this, and that's why I've never been I hate the special editions, I hate the prequels, I hate the sequels, whatever. I don't hate any of Star Wars, and I grew up in the time of the prequels, so they were already, they're already my thing. But I just look at these changes made and these meticulous revisions, and even the base material, of course, just think, wow, this just came out of a guy's head. And obviously, it's not accurate to say that Star Wars is just a product of George Lucas, but I think you can look at the most recent version of the movie we have and say, okay, I can very clearly see what was. And I just find it really impressive. I find it really inspiring, I think, also. Just the level and scale of creativity across these movies is to me absolutely unmatched, impossible to match. It's just immaculate. And so I think this is a brilliant way to end the first trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, I think of other great trilogies, right? Like Lord of the Rings and other films where like those, if you want to consider the Hunger Games or even Dune or other stuff, like all those things were built on previously existing properties, right? All of those were either books or novellas or some kind of thing where George was clearly kind of, I mean, he had like a manuscript, he had an idea, right? The whole Journal of the Wills kind of thing, but that was more of like a storyboard thing than an actual published work, right? He was kind of like, and this is very clear with the Luke and Leia stuff, right? Like as the phrase goes, building the ship as it's flying, right? Kind of building the plane as it's flying, kind of thing, right? Just very kind of on the moment. I mean, things are inspired, obviously, right? Like Chewbacca and Han's relationship is inspired by George's and his dog's relationship. Like he always had his dog with him. That's kind of like the inspiration for Chewbacca, right? And of course the whole A New Hope being based on what's that film? Something Fortress, Hidden Fortress. I want to say
Yeah,
the Kurosawa
yeah,
film.
Hidden Fortress.
And like obviously he's borrowing things here and there. Like some people say the tattoo. I don't know if he's ever said it, but other people in his inner circle say like Tatooine's very much based on Dune and like just all these different things that he borrows from.
Yeah.
Right. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but the whole he couldn't do Flash Gordon, so he made his own like Flash Gordon, right? And it's just sampling from here, taking from Western films, samurai films, like space operas, and just putting it in one big old mixing bowl and here's Star Wars, and I think that's awesome. What's very funny is when I was watching not this one, but when I was watching Empire Strikes Back, my wife she's like you're really she's like this is really like something for you, right? Like she's like this is like something special for you. I'm like yeah. I'm like but like why? She's like because like the whole time you've been watching this movie, like you just have like this smile on your face and you're leaning forward, and I'm just like I'm not aware when I'm doing it, but she tells me that like the way I was watching Star Wars is very different from when we watched like anything else. Basically, she was saying that like I can tell like this it means something to you. I'm like yeah, like Star Wars is. She was asking me like, is Star Wars more important than video games? I'm like, I don't know about that. It's like, is it more important than anime to you? I'm like, yeah, it's more important than anime. Like, she was kind of doing like a tier, trying to figure out where Star Wars ranks in my life. And thank God she didn't ask like if it's more important than like relationships or whatever. But she is asking like comparison to other media. Like, I'm like, yeah, like Star Wars is like it sounds cheesy, but it's like my first love in a way where like I grew up with it as a kid and like Star Wars just means so much to me, and like being able to talk about this stuff, like I always look forward to when we do this stuff because Star Wars is that eternal thing that like I really thought it was over in 2005, like and then goes Clone Wars of course, but I mean that wasn't like that was just like a continuation of something that already concluded in episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. And so like when Disney got Star Wars and all that, and I was like, oh, we're gonna have all these extra stories. Like, what? Like, they're doing a 7, an 8, and a 9 with the original. Like I get like so hyped. And but going back to this, because she told me the same thing again when I was watching Return of the Jedi. She's like, oh, like you're like really into this stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's an understatement. I really am into this stuff. Like Star Wars is just so important to me. And Return of the Jedi, I remember as a kid where before even the Phantom Menace era, like I'm old enough to remember as a kid, like that's it, like this is it. It's just these 3 movies. Yeah. It's just these 3 movies. And then when I was 8 is when I started hearing the rumblings on the playground, rumblings of a new Star Wars movie. This with Darth Vader as a kid, and I was like, what? Like we're gonna get that? And so I mean we're gonna talk about that when we get there when we get to the prequels, but. Oh man, I have such. I can't wait to get to the prequel stuff because I have so many memories. Because it's much more fresher than I was a teenager. I was between 8 and 14 when that trilogy wrapped up, and like I have just so many cool memories I want to get to. We'll get there eventually, but yeah, Return of the Jedi. Back on topic. It's a great. Everything gets wrapped up right. Lando's redeemed. Luke is now a full-fledged Jedi, presumably. We assume he's gonna continue the Jedi Order. We'll find out how that turns out later. But yeah, everything kind of ends up neatly, right?
Yeah.
Like, you assume that that the rebellion is now going to become a new republic and all that stuff going forward. And it's just everything's wrapped up nicely. We had the Force Ghosts show up at the end with Yoda. Everyone's happy. They see off Luke. They kind of give his blessings, sort of. That's like the feeling, because they kind of just like, just watch him from afar. He celebrates from afar. And then we get the big black bars on the top and the bottom as everybody's in the same shot. And then
it's just very special. And I love how you've been explaining its meaning. And I think you're totally right. And one of the many reasons that I love the updates George made, and I love revisiting this movie, is that it's not been left to time. I think that's the greatest thing about how these films have been restored and updated and re-released and everything, is that nothing's left behind. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff about Star Wars that is non-canon. There's always been non-canon storytelling, and Disney made a bigger dent in the canon than anybody had ever made before, but these stories build, and there's a lot of franchises that don't want you to go back. They don't want you to remember. They want to reboot. They want to restart. They want you to get back in from a new square one, and Star Wars doesn't do that really, and I really appreciate
It's like a
that.
ship of Theseus kind of thing.
Yeah,
Where you kind of just just put another slap of paint on
Yeah.
there, keep it looking good.
ship of Theseus, but like in a good way. For as much as Force Awakens is a soft reboot, and we'll talk about that, reusing plot structure, character archetypes, a lot of things, settings. A movie I love, one of my favorite Star Wars movies, but even when we did that, it's obviously so indebted to these movies, and we had the same sort of ending thought for A New Hope, but I get the criticisms of Star Wars are so clear for me to understand. It's so easy for me to understand why people take issue with the new stuff and everything, but the inescapable reality, and I think you put it beautifully, is that these movies are so meaningful in how they spark imagination and joy that having more of that is never going to be the wrong decision. And the idea that, we get to a point like Return of the Jedi, or we get to Revenge of the Sith, or we get to Rise of Skywalker, and we think it's it, and then it's not. And we can keep going and expand the story and learn from the story and share it with other people. It's really great. The same way that this has become an intergenerational story passed down from people older than you to your age, to people in between our ages, to me, to people my sister's age, me being able to share this movie with Jean and everything. It's just very special that they never let this movie go, and that it will always be important, both because it gets heavily referenced by the new material, but just because it's so meaningful that it's always going to be on Disney Plus, and it's always going to be in these big Blu-ray collections, and we're always going to return to Endor and Tatooine and the Ewoks and everything. It's rubber stamped in pop culture for forever and ever, and I think I like that. And for as much as I am cynical a lot of the time, I look at Return of the Jedi and I say, a lot of the things that I criticize Star Wars for nowadays, I criticize a lot of franchise filmmaking for nowadays, was here. This reutilization of ideas, this sort of familiarity, a lot of it. It was here, but I love it here because it's great to just be in these stories. And so it's okay to just be good with that and not be constantly needing the subversion or the change. As much as I love that in The Last Jedi, which we'll talk about in time, which will be a really fun conversation to have, I think. But I don't know. I like what this movie represents. I like that it will always be here. I think it's just so comfortable. So I'm really pleased we got to go through the original trilogy, and I think we're going to have increasingly interesting conversations as we go further to prequels and sequels that we both love to varying degrees and various entries that are a lot more contested than these. So
yeah, like I'm already thinking of the things that I love, but also the things that I don't love, and we're gonna get to there. But I'm interested to see how it talks about the dialogue in the prequel trilogy. That's gonna be interesting, I think, when we get there.
Attack of the Clones will be really interesting because I don't even know the last time that I saw Attack of the Clones all the way through. It is genuinely, it's maybe been like well over a decade since I saw that movie all the way through. It's by far the one I've rewatched the least. By far. So
understandable. Understandable.
But Andrew, a fantastic conversation as always, but we would be remiss to leave the audience without you saying,
oh, the pillow's not there. May the Force be with you.